I'm Matt Poore from North Carolina State Cooperative Extension and the Animal Science Department there, and very glad to be here on Beaver Creek Farm with Mike and Jean Jones, are the farmers and owners here. We're here today specifically to talk about a project where we've gone to 3 different farms in this region and sampled the soil, the plants, and the meat that comes from the animals that are in the grass-fed beef system like this farm, and really looked at the overall implications in the ecology and also in the human nutrition aspects of the meat that is consumed.
I'm Mike Jones, and this is my wife Jane. We've been on this farm since 1975. We started out, I guess, like everybody else did, and we just whatever grass was there, and I guess we've been doing it for 40 years, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
mostly.
in a different way. And before 15 years ago, we was putting them up, grain feeding them for. In those days, it looked like a parking lot. Sometimes it'd be green, a lot of times, and in the wintertime, if we was to try to do it with not much forage on the frozen ground, we couldn't get a pigtail post in to move the poly wire if we was doing it those days. But nowadays it doesn't freeze under this forage. It hadn't in years. Somehow I got started, the conservationist Dick Everhart was in Surrey County, and he asked me if I wanted to plant, native warm season grasses. And at first I told him no. I didn't know what it was, and then I got to reading about it. I just fell in love with the idea.
North Carolina, where we are now, really was historically, there were a lot of open areas, prairies, before the modern civilization was here, and those were grazed by buffalo, and they were tended by the Native Americans in their daily lives. And so there is some long-term perspective for these types of systems in this landscape. One of the things that we know about forage and pasture systems in this area is this particular grass that we're standing in today is called tall fescue. And this is a European plant that was brought into the United States by folks that were establishing pastures. There's lots of things we could talk about, the ecological implications of having this kind of a plant. But there are solutions to that. So one is to build more diversity into your system, more plants, other types of plants. And there's examples of that here on the farm that have been tried by Mike and Jean over the years. The other thing is you can build diversity to get away from very heavily cool season oriented base. And so this is a plant that likes it during the cool season, not so much in the summer. So the other thing that's been done here is to establish a fairly large planting of native warm season plants, largely grasses, but that can feed the animals during the summer and are a little bit better for the whole ecology of the system.
Here at Mike's, we've got 2 different paddocks. One is 17 acres. That's predominantly a mixture of about 5 species of native warm season grasses. Whereas behind me here, this is more of what you would consider a pollinator mix. It's a lower percentage of grasses and more percentage of forbs and wildflowers, a high diversity, and where there's 20 plus species in this mix.
Mike and Jean Jones here at Beaver Creek Farms is a great example of producers who focus on pasture ecology and really look at all the aspects of their farming program, not just their farm, but the wildlife habitat, their soils, their pasture, and themselves, and how they fit in a healthy, functioning, pasture-based ecosystem.
In the last 15 or 18 years, we've been working with North Carolina State University. It's one of our very good support group, Cooperative Extension.
And Mike and Jean are a really great pair of farmers that I get to work with. Very blessed to have them. They do a lot to help us out in Extension. They've been very unique because they're a part of the research that goes on at NC State. And so they've actually hosted several trials here in Surrey County. And the good thing about that is that other local producers can come out when we do field days and present the research, and they can really see hands-on what's happened and what the benefits are.
There's great potential for these types of systems to expand in North Carolina. We know that by adopting more of an ecological approach to management, we can make better decisions about how to manage our grasses and pastures that we have, what we can plant. It's a much different system than our conventional cattle production system. These systems require a much lower level of fertility inputs, and then by general philosophy, lower input of herbicides and other types of chemicals into the system. Now, one of the things that we know is that there's a big ecological web here in the pasture, and many of the inputs we use in normal agriculture can hurt some of that ecology. So very many benefits to the overall system in terms of making it a little bit better for the environment.
We're great proponents of wildlife, and we try to raise our beef without being detrimental to every other species that's in the area. Wildlife, and then find out with the native warm season grasses that they like well, the cows even like it better. When they go into a patch of big blue stem, and like we just moved them into this field, and there's intermittent gamma grass still in it, and they just go right to it, and it's like ice cream.
With Amazing Grazing, we like to focus on teaching farmers how to look at pasture ecology. And if you remember, ecology is that branch of biology that deals with how living things interact with each other. When we think about pasture ecology, to me, we're looking at trying to find that balance between what's good for the soil, what's good for the forages, what's good for the animals, what's good for the people. It's about production, it's about economics, it's about all of those things.
These native warm season grass ecosystems, they're dominated by perennial grasses. They were the native grasses here and designed for North Carolina soils. What really stands out is they're adapted to North Carolina soils and climates. They've got a real extensive, diverse root system, very deep, a lot of biomass, and which that starts the whole ecosystem biodiversity by having good soil health.
Soil health is an important aspect for pasture management because pastures have a strong capacity to fix carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, produce plant material all throughout the year, essentially. It depends on the plant species, but many of our pastures here in North Carolina are diverse. There's tall fescue base in the western part of the state, and Bermuda grass, Bahia grass in the eastern part of the state. And the impact of soil health on pasture growth is really about getting water to the plant, so building organic matter, that pasture growing it. Some of the material falls back to the ground and decomposes, provides organic matter to the soil, and that then becomes stabilized as organic matter. It absorbs water very readily, and then it also is a source of food for the microorganisms in soil, the bacteria, the fungi, the actinomycetes, those organisms that feed on it and then transform those plant materials back into the elements that the plants can take up and utilize those nutrients. So soil health is an integral part of a pasture system. Pasture systems tend to be long-lived, decades old, and so there's always a nutrient cycling that's going on there.
With weather patterns changing, these grasses, they're so resilient. The way they grow, they've got an extensive root system which can go down to 12 foot deep. And their growth pattern, what really helps in the summertime is if you can look here, you can see this umbrella growth pattern, and it keeps the soil shaded, so it holds the soil temperature down a whole lot. It drops the soil temperature from radiating a lot of heat back into the atmosphere, so you're keeping the soil cooler and you're reducing erosion and runoff is a really good benefit.
I have a chance to talk to a lot of farmers, and we all pretty much agree that our weather patterns are changing. We do know that our rainfall events are more intense. Sometimes we have major droughts depending on where you are in certain parts of the country. And here in the mid-Atlantic states, we might just have what I like to call dry periods, but our forages need that constant water that we get from rainfall. And we may get very intense rain events which can cause some erosion and some washing. So we see those things out in our pastures. So again, how do we adapt to those changes that are happening to our farms? But we try to get producers to look at those different type of options that are out there and realize that pasture-based agriculture is a very broad system, and it can be adapted to fit each individual farm.